Good morning, Blues, for Tuesday the 4th of February 2025. This morning, Blues is going to kind of be a dual thing where we're going to review, obviously, and react to last night's win over West Ham, but also react a little bit to whatever happened on transfer deadline day. Hope you're doing really, really well on this Tuesday. There's no other place to start. Last night at the Bridge, was at the game. It was interesting pre-game hearing maybe briefs from the club that we need to focus on the football because too much attention is being paid to transfers. For about an hour last night, I'm not entirely sure people internally at the club wanted that to continue because it was awful for about an hour. And although Chelsea came back, which I think we have to talk about and why they came back and why hopefully it is a huge turning point in the season, I just pray it is, undeniably Chelsea is still not in a great place. Like, performance-wise, there are still concerns. There are still personnel concerns and, concerns over the style of play being quite pedestrian and looking like for a lot of opponents is being found out. But undeniably, Chelsea did find a way. They found a way to get back into the game and win a game they simply had to. They had to find a way to win last night. They did get the 3 points, and that's the most important thing. And I think to kind of flip it, I was, thinking about this post-game, that when you look at how bad Chelsea have been pretty much since mid-December and this run now that has gone basically into February, Chelsea is still fourth. They're in the top four. Although the points gap to Man City and Newcastle, who I believe play each other next, is not, of course, that vast, Chelsea is still in a good position, not an unsalvageable position, which, is quite a remarkable thing. And you kind of hope that if this is the worst part of the season and we've just got out the back of it, Chelsea could be in a really good position heading into the spring, which, kind of tells you about the failings of other teams. But, I always am a firm believer. You play within the season you're in. There's no point looking back to last season and talking about points totals. I think that's a little bit flippant. I'll judge Chelsea based on this season, and they desperately need to get Champions League football. So Chelsea are back into, maybe not pole position, but, they are in a position now of strength. And hopefully, especially if you think about not the FA Cup game at Brighton, Chelsea can maybe put some distance once again and build up a gap between themselves and the chasing pack. So that in itself is a positive. If you agree with that, comment down below, give me your thoughts on the game. So the big decision that Enzo Maresca had to make last night was the most obvious one of all, and it's the decision that the club should have made in the summer, and that is not having Robert Sanchez as your first choice goalkeeper. Philip Jorgensen getting the nod. He has played a couple of Premier League games before, but this really was the most notable and high profile game he started, also given the context of the form of Chelsea recently and given the failures of Robert Sanchez being so public, being so obvious. It was a big night for Jorgensen. I feel slightly sorry for him because he concedes, but I have to say, the error for that goal was not a goalkeeping one. It was really a centre-back one, and that came through Levi Colwill. But, given where we've been with Sanchez, just kind of bare competence is an improvement. That's kind of, unfortunately, where Chelsea are with goalkeeping standards at the moment. If you don't stupidly run out of your goal when you don't need to, if you don't, drop the ball stupidly when a ball comes into the box from a corner and gift away another goal to the opposition, if you don't frantically run out and give away a penalty, you are an improvement on Chelsea's goalkeeping standards this season. So Jorgensen doesn't have a lot to do to make himself look better and more reliable. But I hope now this is the start of a run for Jorgensen because, we're not going to judge Chelsea's mission between now and the summer. Footballing mission, not PSR, not stupid uni dissertation theory from the SDs. Our judgment should be, and our mission should be to kind of ascertain how good or bad Jorgensen is before we stupidly loan him to Strasbourg, but we should ascertain how good he is because that's where Chelsea are, and then make a judgment in the summer over what to do with the goalkeeper because understandably it's a really bad position at the moment. In terms of the rest of the lineup, I wasn't too happy about Trev being dropped. I didn't understand it. Levi hasn't been playing great recently, and that was only, I think, exemplified last night, unfortunately. And I think that, Trev, since he's come back, has put in some good performances. So I didn't really understand that change. The rest of the team is very predictable, very, very predictable. This is what Chelsea have been doing all season, really. So you can't have a go at Maresca or at least say you were shocked that the team remained unchanged because, well, what else is Maresca going to do based on the evidence we've seen so far? This is what he always does, really. But of course, he made some significant changes later in the game. The game in the first half and about the first 60 minutes were pretty bad from a Chelsea point of view. Yes, West Ham sat deep, but I don't think that's a good enough excuse. Many teams come to the Bridge and decide to sit deep. It's what you do with your own game that I'm more interested in when you are given the ball. And I think that unfortunately, Chelsea's, it wasn't just that, oh, you're coming up against a low block and of course you can't just, play a couple of passes and get through that. You have to be more intricate. You have to be a little bit more controlled and, think about what you're doing to execute and get those space, get those overloads when you can. The problem was the walking style of football. Chelsea were pedestrian at times with the ball. They were too slow, far too sloppy as well. It allowed West Ham to get into that shape very easily. And I think the frustration was the times when Chelsea did turn over the ball, they actually made some looks at goal, which kind of showed you how open at times that West Ham defence was. This wasn't a great defensive unit that has been immaculate, even though Graham Potter I think has improved West Ham from a structural point of view compared to Lopetegui. It still isn't an amazing defensive unit, and that was the thing that frustrated me. The lack of width at times in the first half. What I mean by that is I still am not the biggest fan of the way it feels like our wingers are kind of just left on their own to take on multiple defenders. I would rather see a situation where those fullbacks have more of a license. And I think maybe we saw a little bit more of this in the second half, just in terms of rotations between Gusto and Neto. Neto, of course, an instrumental player. But in the first half, there was very little for me to feel like Chelsea were getting ahead of steam, really pinning West Ham back, really putting them under pressure. We were crossing a lot into the box, but those crosses really didn't pay dividends. And unfortunately, I think Reece James either wasn't crossing enough or he just wasn't in the right area to cross a lot of the time. So I just thought from an execution point of view, there's no point getting around it. Chelsea's performance wasn't great. And then when you top it all off with the error from Levi, I have no idea what he's doing. There were complaints from Chelsea players after. I have no idea what they're complaining about. It's a stupid pass by Levi, a blind pass into a dangerous area, and Jarrod Bowen, as a great, I think, Premier League finisher, as someone who is really devastating in transition and really alert. You want to give him a one-on-one, you just gifted him a one-on-one, and you've given West Ham a great leg up in a game they already probably felt pretty confident about, given they've got to this stage near half-time where they're 0-0, they're holding Chelsea at arm's length, and now they've got something to cling on to. It was a disastrous moment, and unfortunately Levi has been pretty poor for a while now. I don't think his form has been good for some time. And I think that, Levi, we've bigged up Levi a lot, and we give players praise when they deserve it, but we also give them criticism when they deserve it as well. And, to me, I think Levi, in recent games, Levi is now one that I think probably should be taken out the firing line, shouldn't be in the starting 11. I think Trevor and Tosin look like a better back two at the moment, because Tosin made some key blocks. I think from an aerial point of view, he was quite impactful in that second half when Chelsea were especially trying to get back into the game, but also defending a lead late on. So I just think Levi looks sloppy. He, from a physical point of view, I think has been outdone a number of times. You simply cannot have errors like that because they are so disastrous. They're comically bad. So I think Levi needs to rediscover his form, and I think taking him out the team is not the end of the world. He shouldn't be undroppable. His decision making, he's not as impactful. His passing hasn't been as good for a while now. He's played some really poor passes, not just that one, but even in the first half, passes that could have led to worse situations. So for me, I think Levi has been on a bad run of form recently, and I think probably now is the time to take him out the team. So 1-0 half-time, the mood inside the Bridge wasn't great. And what did you expect? I mean, the performance wasn't great. The performance wasn't good. We were playing walking football, and I did not see a level of intensity from the team. Jackson was having a really poor performance. Sancho was offering nothing. Maresca was offering very little. In midfield, Enzo and Caicedo, as best as they were to try and create opportunities, it felt like Chelsea, just all around Chelsea, just didn't seem to have a grip on the game. And also from an intensity point of view, it didn't feel like our players were at the level they needed to be. It didn't feel like they on the pitch appreciated how important this game was, not just because you got Graham Potter in the dugout, not just because we've been terrible for a while now, not just because of the transfer window shenanigans off the pitch that has annoyed people. you have to win this game. All of your rivals have dropped points. It's West Ham at home. This is not a top 10 team. This is a team near the bottom of the league. You simply have to win this game. You cannot afford for a game at home to West Ham to go by without you gaining maximum points. But we've got to talk about Enzo Maresca, because Maresca has for a long time, it feels like now, been rightly criticised for his lack of action from the touchline. And finally, he acts in the big moment. He had to act quickly in that second half, because I have to say, in the first 15 minutes of that second half, to me, it only really looked like West Ham were going to go and score a second. And I think if Chelsea went 2-0 down, I don't think the game would have been recoverable, to be honest. However, he makes the changes. He takes off Nicholas Jackson from Mark Guiu, something he hasn't done much this season, to be honest. He brings on also Malo Gusto for Reece James. I still think Reece looks not great to me fitness-wise. He doesn't look at the right paces. It feels like understandably, maybe he doesn't maybe trust his body as much. But Gusto comes on, hopefully to add a bit more energy. And also Christopher Nkunku comes on as well. Pedro Neto is kind of the most instrumental of the subs that are made in that second half, but it was great that Nkunku came on as well, and I was excited to see that, because he's going to get a sizable chunk of minutes here to play. So basically completely flipping the attacking personnel, which I think it was what was needed to happen. It was a bold choice, but I think it needed to happen because that personnel that he's been going with hasn't been achieving things over the past month. So it's right to look at your bench and finally act when you have to. So what I think changed was not some tactical masterclass. It was just the sense that Chelsea upped their intensity, and Neto, especially down the right below me from my season ticket seat in the East Upper, I saw him below me. His crossing, which I think is a good part of his game, was a lot better. A lot more kind of low dipped crosses, because we're not great aerially, but especially with Cucurella making those late runs into the box can be pretty impactful. And just adding a bit more chaos, and that's I think what Guiu does. Guiu is a very raw forward, but he works hard. I know we're talking about bare minimum here, but I think he's a little bit of a chaos merchant, which I like to see. He puts himself about. He, I think, unsettles defenders. He very much wants to press quickly, and sometimes will force defenders to make decisions quicker. Doesn't allow the opposing backline to settle. He can make runs in behind. He's not the forward Chelsea should be having, but at the moment, and for what it was last night, it made an impact, and it made some sort of disruption in the West Ham defence to open up space for others, which was so key. The goal is proper kind of scramble, almost like watching the Royal Rumble. There's bodies everywhere, there's deflections, and finally it lands at the guy who plays the ball in the first time, Neto, his second Premier League goal this year. He is someone, talk about Chelsea desperately needing a win, someone who desperately needed a goal, Pedro Neto, because he has been someone that's not been producing for a while, and I felt that was hopefully a turning point in his season, because Neto really needs to step up, because it gets lost that, he was bought for a significant fee in the summer. He was one of those rare signings recently where Chelsea have actually gone in for a prime Premier League player. So for him, it was a big moment. For Chelsea, it was a big moment. We had the dread of that VAR wait, which is just, it truly is just dreadful. You're sat inside the ground. You have no idea what's going on. It's taking so long for them to make a choice. We've been through this malarkey a lot, but I'm quite fortunate because I sit in the East Upper. A little bit further away from me to my left and up is obviously the commentary position in the gantry where all the media, like the commentators, are sat. And it's happened a few times where there's been a wait for a VAR call, and I can sometimes hear the reaction from fans who are obviously looking back at maybe monitors or trying to get a sense from the commentators. Maybe Gary Neville was letting them know. And they started celebrating way before actually Atwell gave the choice and made it clear it was going to be given. So I sort of knew that, but if you're not, bad luck if you're anywhere else on the ground, because you have absolutely no clue what's going on. And that felt like a defining moment, because I think if that hadn't have been given, the mood in the ground probably would have turned down a little bit more. Obviously West Ham get away with one, and Chelsea then have to score 2 goals. The fact that goal happened in that moment, Chelsea still have a decent chunk of time to score a second, which they needed to, and very much from there the momentum had shifted. Chelsea are suddenly winning second balls. So often we talk about tactics, right? And I'm not saying that there was nothing within what Maresca did in terms of maybe positioning or asking players to maybe go at a player or go at an area a little bit more, or maybe the small, subtle positioning. But so many times when you watch football, even at a high level, at times it's those intangible things. It's better intensity, it's better pressing, it's winning 50-50s. It's, momentum shifts in games can make such a big difference. And I think that's what it was last night. Chelsea just had to find a way to get past West Ham, because at the moment our form isn't there. We need to get our form and overall performances back. That is what is going to sustain a better period of performances. But there was no way Chelsea could walk away without 3 points last night. Like, it just was a very desperate situation. And I think it was credit to Maresca that he was proactive. And Maresca that we haven't seen for a while. I have absolutely no clue what went on for the past month, where he decided for several games, I'm just not going to make any subs. Because it's not like the personnel has radically shifted. Joao Felix has moved on to AC Milan, but really it's not like suddenly he's got a crop of new signings to play with. So I don't understand what was going on for about a few weeks, where he decided I'm not going to make any changes when the game in front of me is clearly changing. I mean, it needs to be studied because it's hurt Chelsea. But hopefully we're getting back to early Maresca, where I think rightfully he gained credit for being proactive, for not just sitting on the sidelines idly and waiting for something to happen, or thinking that plan A is the only way that's going to work. You need to be proactive at this level, especially when your team is not only 1-0 down but isn't working that well. And I think Neto, obviously, as a player, made a big difference in that game down that flank. He was just consistently, as we see with Neto, consistently running, consistently making things happen, forcing West Ham to act and not just sit in a comfortable shape. And then, of course, Cole Palmer. It's the most un-Cole Palmer goal ever. I mean, it feels like most of Palmer's goals are either a penalty or actually really good moments of individual brilliance. He individually, makes that goal happen, obviously. To me, it's not. It is an own goal, I think. I know it'd probably be given to Palmer, or people want to give it to Palmer. I know it's been given to Wan-Bissaka. It wasn't going towards. He was definitely cutting it across goal. But listen, we'll take the luck. We'll run with it. And it was a huge goal. And it was important at that moment that we took that wave of momentum from the crowd, from the sense that West Ham had been rocked by that goal from Chelsea, the Pedro Neto goal. And it felt like just in those moments, you've got to capitalise on it. Chelsea are so bad at not capitalising at moments of good momentum. We've seen that so often in recent weeks, where Chelsea are on top in a game and they don't make it count to the full extent, and then they're punished when there's another lull in the game. So he made that count 2-1. And there's something to cling on to. I do just want to give another credit to Maresca for going to a back three. He brings on Trev late on. Chelsea, I mean, there was that shaky moment, talk about Jorgensen, where he played the ball directly to Danny Ings. Luckily, Ings didn't have his, miraculous kind of shooting boots on and decided to hit it back towards the corner flag. But other than that, Chelsea, there was one exceptional block with Tosin that came in a move where I believe it was the same move when Guiu did the splits and got injured, and it felt like everyone for a while on that pitch just had no idea what Chelsea players, everyone was kind of just hesitating. It was a weird vibe. The game was still in action and Chelsea nearly paid for it. But Tosin has made some big blocks. That's one of his best attributes as a Chelsea player so far. So he's saved us a couple of points there, which is good to see. For a guy who hasn't been amazing this season, but I think, in key moments has stepped up. And maybe, as some people have pointed out, that's that experience telling, to have that composure and to have that conviction to make those key blocks when you need to, which is absolutely what Chelsea needed to do. It's not a vintage performance. Like, you can't walk away from it and go, wow, like, this player came in and, really, it's an outstanding performance and we're going to move on now. You talk about individuals, right? Neto made a difference. So hopefully for him, that's a positive boosting moment in his season. Guiu, if he can get through the injury, and it seems like both Jackson, who also had an injury problem last night, it seems both are okay. We'll see how quickly they recover and whether they're ready for the weekend against Brighton. But I think credit to Maresca. He made the changes. He was proactive. There's a lot of talk at the moment about what goes on, and actually the control at Chelsea is above the head coach. I think it was quite notable that last night was a night where the coach made a tangible difference on a game, which needs to happen more often. Maresca is paid to win games of football. He's paid to win a lot of games of football for Chelsea. Chelsea need to start racking up those wins again, because the momentum is there and it needs to be capitalised on. And also, we're in a Premier League season where we're lucky that Man City have been way off the pace. We're lucky that it seems like most teams are dropping points around us, and because we're kind of top four specialists in a way, that's kind of been the way Chelsea have been for a long time now. In this kind of environment, you don't need to be perfect. Chelsea do not need to be flawless between now and May to get Champions League football, unless it turns into a freakish season. But listen, we're over halfway into the season now. The way teams are kind of playing is the way they're probably going to stay playing. Like, there will be upticks in form, as there always is. there may be one team who goes above and beyond. Like, you know, Chelsea last season took a long time to get going, but Chelsea just need to stay on the path and not have another disastrous month like they did. I think if Chelsea replicate what they did in the first period of the season, they're obviously going to get Champions League football. But I don't even think that is going to get them Champions League football. And if we're thinking fifth from a coefficient point of view is going to get you Champions League football, listen, it's not the end of the world. But I think that, listen, it was just so important for Chelsea as a club, the mood around the club, for Chelsea to have a positive evening. And I think the credit goes to Maresca for making those changes. Credit goes to Pedro Neto. I think he was a very instrumental player last night for changing that game. Guiu, you know, whether this turns into more of a substantial first team one and what could become of that is obviously going to be revealing, because, you know, this is a guy who I didn't think was going to have a first team run. And Christopher Nkunku too was actually given more of a chance. I'd like to see him more as a central player. I think just sticking him out on the left is just a waste of time, but he did at moments want to cut inside, which is just natural for him. He wants to make those runs inwards. I hope we see a bit more of Nkunku, because the other players haven't been performing for a while, and I think it's good. I think it's healthy competition for the A and B team, which was clear in the first part of the season. It's healthy that there is competition for places, and hopefully that will spark a reaction in the regulars. Noni Madueke, Jadon Sancho, Nicholas Jackson to want to reclaim their places. I don't think that's harmful at the moment, because talk about the transfer window, Chelsea didn't sign an attacking player. We signed another really raw, inexperienced central midfielder. We decided not to recall Andre Santos or Ugo Chukwu. Dizassi's gone on loan to Aston Villa. Felix has gone on loan to AC Milan. Maybe I'll talk about that in other podcasts. I mean, there isn't really much more to say other than that. We've been through a lot of what the transfer situation is at Chelsea right now, but this is the squad now for the rest of the season. Chelsea have decided to take a risk. I think the big positive is bringing back Trevor Chalobah is kind of one of the big things they've done this season. And I'm not going to give him the credit for that, because he shouldn't have been loaned out. I'm not, I'm sorry to be negative, but I can't give credit for that, because it was a stupid decision to begin with. But hopefully now we've got him back, we can utilise him to the best of our ability and make him a regular in that back four. So those are my thoughts. Please let me know yours in the comments below. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.